Hey folks, it's Mr. T back again here from the North Coast, Dominican Republic. Thanks for tuning in. Now, I've been here 15 plus years and there's many places I've visited around the world before this, but I don't think there's too many places I would like to swap this for, and I'll explain why. But first I want to focus a little bit on why to get out of some of the countries that seem to be going down the toilet, so to speak. And I'm talking about legally, safety-wise, for the sake of your children, you and your family's future, etc. So there's many aspects to it, but we get a lot of people coming here from Canada, from US, and from countries in Europe. So especially for you guys, pay good attention and try to weigh up the pros and cons based on what I'm covering in this video. So let's get started. Now, the fact that you clicked to watch this video, there must be something that makes you think, there could be a better place out there where I can live healthier, happier, and maybe even more prosperous, or have a lot more adventure and excitement in your life, or be safe from authorities. And we shouldn't even have to say that these days because there's so much insanity happening around the world. But like I tell a lot of consulting clients when they ask me, do you think we should move now or wait a few years? I always say, good plants don't grow in poisonous soil. And has your country or the state in your country become a poisonous place to live? This is what you should ask yourself. And what's the political environment? Are your rights respected? Human, civil and property rights. If it's US, you have a constitution, the Bill of Rights. If that's not being totally respected, well, then you know it's poisonous soil. It's a poisonous place to live. I meet a lot of Americans, especially coming down here, well, and Canadians, who tell me everything's turning completely insane back home. I come from Pennsylvania, I come from New York, and yesterday I was talking to a guy. He said, I'm not allowed to be a white, straight male. That's like a big taboo. Well, that's really sad. As I'll cover more about later in this video, down here you can be with a mohawk on and dressed really weird. As long as you got money in your pocket, you are accepted. And they feel that difference. And I think that's what makes this one of the beautiful places to actually live, because they're not prejudiced. So you have to just check, are they trying to protect your children or violate your children? Is it safe to send them to school or not? Are they running sexual agendas on purpose on children or not? Are they trying to take the cash away from you or the control of your own money, your hard-earned gains? Are they trying to take the property away from you, or is there a danger that that could happen? All of these things should be part of your decision-making process as to whether you should get the heck out of there in a hurry or whether you should stick around. There's also another saying, you can either fight or take the flight. If you're unhappy about how things are in your area or in your country and you love living there, well, then you got to fight it with everything you've got. I fight from down here. One thing that puts me off living anywhere else is what they call the Great Reset, Agenda 2030. There's a bunch of globalists who thinks it's a good idea putting everybody under army boots. And the whole thing that we just went through from the last 3.5 years, that's all part of it. And they put insanity on steroids. And we've been attacked in so many ways, but if people don't look into each way and realize this is all part of a bigger plan to create smart cities, 15-minute cities that you're not allowed to leave or you get punished, just like China, and remove the cash so they can control. If you do something they don't like, they can deduct money, they can control how much you can save, they can control a lot of things in your life. If we don't want that, we need to obviously fight that, but you should also ask yourself, is there a better place where they're not pushing all that crap the way that they're pushing it in some of the more advanced countries? Right now, if we just start with the attacks I'm talking about that should make you think about moving, would be like around the world we're seeing so many countries where they're opening the dams, they're flooding the streets, US to Turkey to China to India, many countries. And it's all part of a land grab, because under Agenda 2030 there's something called the Wild Lands Project, which is to get people off the open land areas into human settlement zones. This is like out of Hunger Games. But Hunger Games wasn't just a movie they made for entertainment. They always like to tell the truth in advance, just like the little cartoon series, The Simpsons. Everything bad that's happened was already shown. That was their plan. They show it in advance. That's what these Freemasons do. They show what they want to do to us, then they do it, and then they feel better maybe sleeping at night that, well, we warned them. We warned them that we were going to burn it down, that we were going to take the land, that we were going to take the meat away, that we were going to take the cash away, that we were going to poison the food, etc., etc. I don't know if you have woken up, you already were awake, depends on who's watching here. But all these medical attacks that happened on humanity according to their planned program, and now they want to do it again. And people that are stupid enough will line up for their 5th or 6th booster. You know, there's a time where it comes where you got to pull your head out of the sand and realize the world's not run by governments. The world's run by corporations. And now we've already found out that all these jab companies, they didn't even make one single vial. It came from military contractors. If this is all a surprise to you, or you think this is, well, then maybe you haven't done your research. You've been too busy playing petang or going golfing and thinking that everything's normal. For them to install this whole great reset, which ain't great for us, the people, they have to implement new normals. It's a new normal that you can only be allowed to travel once every 3 years. Listen to those words, allowed to. You know, I've been to places in Europe where they say every second sentence, well, we're not allowed to do this and we're not allowed to do that. That's because there's some bastards out there who think they have a larger claim over your life than you have over your life. Anyway, let's move on with the attacks. The other thing that I see a lot coming out in terms of videos from around the world and from individuals is just independent people filming thugs, gangs, just kicking their way in or smashing their way into shops, stealing clothes and stuff, and robbing a shop for everything it has and running out the door, and nobody's trying to stop them. And if they get caught, they get released straight away again. Now, this is part of this cabal launching chaos. And this is what you're ending up living in. We don't have that shit down here. So when the people who are supposed to protect you, the government and their troops, allow criminals to run rampant and do whatever they want, then it's the tail wagging the dog of society. Is that a safe place for you to be? To have your children, to drive, to do grocery shopping, to go to work? Once you get enough of this chaos happening, and they're letting thousands of undocumented people over the borders, this is creating even more chaos, and they don't have your culture. They come with various cultures, and when people get desperate, they do stupid things. So when somebody's trapped in a car and there's a bunch of thugs jumping all over a car with a lady and 2 or 3 kids in the car, who's going to come to her rescue? I don't know if it's like that where you live, but that's where they want it. Anyway, I'm just covering a few things that you got to just weigh up. Actually, he has a slogan in Latin called order out of chaos. Order means their troops, their control, their way, which is very fascist. Now, chaos is what they have to implement in order to get the masses to accept, please come help save us from all this chaos. So everything that we saw, Black Lives Matters, Antifa smashing shit, this was all part of them creating chaos and hoping that everybody would yell out for governments and the globalists to take over and save us. But it ain't going to be good for them. Another thing I hear from Americans coming down here is about this TQ agenda being shoved down people's throat. Any sane human being knows there's 2 sexes, that's it. Anything else, you should challenge the heck out of people. But society has let it slide, let it slide, let it slide. And things left by themselves only go from bad to worse to horrible. So if you're now living in a society where the insane are considered the sane, and the sane are considered the outcast, what a horrible feeling. Then it's time to either fight or take the flight. So make a choice there, because if your children go to school and some comes in to shove sexualized books in their face and read to them, I mean, I don't even understand what psycho parents would send their children to such a school. They should be taken out immediately. It's not the kids' fault, it's the parents' fault. They say the world won't go to hell because of evil people, but it will go to hell if good people don't stop them. So the good people need to not acquiesce, not go along with this shit. If I have a daughter and she goes to a bathroom, I want her to go to the ladies' bathroom. And there shouldn't be some bastard in there trying to sexually assault her or come onto her. Then real men should come in and smash his against the toilet. Then they stop doing that shit. But you see, real men have been pussified and they want to get rid of them from society. They've put estrogen in the water. They've confused men. They've made movies years ago like Anger Management, that you're not allowed to get aggressive, you're not allowed to speak out. And then gradually they've tamed down the man to become this useless piece of jelly who can't stand up for himself or for other people in society. What do people do when they see a guy get violated on the street? 5 guys against 1 guy, and maybe he's the innocent one. They just get their cell phones out. What happened? That's not the kind of shitty society I want to live in. If that's what the masses do, then it's probably already a lost cause. And then a lot of people are going to get killed off. So you either wake people up, and if you can't, you got to fly out and live somewhere else. Now I just want to cover some of the attacks that I'm seeing that's happening, and it's death through 1,000 cuts. So it's very subtle, but it affects you. All right, one of them is the financial side. Why did the prices have to double, triple, quadruple? That was part of their plan. They want to get rid of the middle class. Poor people are much easier to control. So this is a big part of the agenda. I just heard from Canada they got to pay $8 per gallon. That's robbery. And then you have psycho puppet politicians saying that that's a punishment to people for being part of climate change or the climate situation, which is a big. So that's just one way, but let me rattle a few more off. Then you got the fires, and we know it's by because fresh bushes and trees don't stand next to a pulverized house, or there's a car with magnesium running down the street. Asphalt melts at 300 degrees and takes 1,300 degrees to melt the mags on a vehicle. So you got to give your head a scratch and say, what's happening here? And that's the same with Paradise, California, a few years ago. Well, that was actually a test. And we know that there's a reason why they didn't set the alarm off in Hawaii, why they had cut the water already. All the heads of these different departments that's needed during an emergency were conveniently away on vacation. And then when they did arrive, then they denied any help, any access, any supplies to go to the people who had survived. And of course, then they wanted to do the big land grab, which they are in the middle of right now. And this was all a planned smart city. So is that just in Hawaii? No. It's happening in Canada. It's happening through the US. It's happening in places in Europe right now. It's happening right throughout Africa in different spots. If you look up the NASA fire map, type that into Google, you'll be shocked to see how many places around Earth that's on fire right now. And then if you look a little bit deeper, you can see those very places that they're lighting up, they've got smart cities planned for there. 15-minute cities. 15 minutes for who? The people who take Learjets to go and discuss what we are allowed or not allowed to do? Or, you know, they'll be burning a lot more fuel. They'll be taking a lot more than 15 minutes to get to their destinations, but no problem. Because they only want super rich and filthy poor or dead people. That's the agenda. Sustainable development means gradual. Anyway, if you ever want to watch a good video from a lady that they did, her name is Rosa Koire, and she did international seminars called Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 2030. You can actually find it in my playlist. If you go down, you see a thumbnail, I can't remember the name, but it's got burning koalas in the trees from Australia. She gave me permission to use a segment about this whole agenda in that video, so check it out. Now, the other thing is weather modification. When I was a young man, or much younger, there wasn't big blankets of grey shit everywhere. No, there was different clouds and different forms floating around sometimes, and it would take hours for a rain shower to build up. Now, people have got used to looking at this grey manufactured shit Look up NASA cloud making machines, look up weather modification, look up ionospheric heaters, look up HARP systems. They've got so much equipment on naval ships, on things that look like oil platforms with big round bubbles. They control everything, every drop of rain, every drought, every storm, where hurricanes form and grow and what direction they go. These HARP systems can control the jet stream, so they control the wind direction. So they've said for years, those who control the weather control the people. And then we hear about Kill Bates, as I call him, owning most of the farmland. There's the water rights, there's the food. They want to get rid of meat, 3D print meat. They want to put the jibby jab liquid into the meat. You know, this is psycho stuff. In just 3.5 years, the world's gone from something fairly normal to insane. And it's time to wake up and realize that. The other thing, during these lockdowns that they did, which was criminal of course, and destroyed trillions of dollars worth of business, all part of eliminating the middle class. During those, they were running around in white vans when everybody was prisoners in their homes, installing 5G equipment. Ah, interesting. Every time in history they've launched new technology like the go back in time, you know, you had radar equipment, etc. There's always a scamdemic that happens at the same time. Funny that, isn't it? And then they run around installing all this equipment. And what are they going to use it for? Well, it's weaponized technology. It operates on a 60 gigahertz frequency, which is highly destructive to our cells. And it steals the oxygen from the air. That's why you see concerts with people fainting, because they're stealing the oxygen out of the air. They've got G kicked into action there. There's so much weaponized technology that people don't understand exists, and spy equipment, etc. And these societies that are very advanced are full of it. So that's another reason I would get the heck out if I was you. And then we got the tyranny by police. When it's a cartel running the country and their troops are called police, well, they are policy enforcers. So these policies, if they're not there to protect you, save you, help you, then they are abusive. And we've seen a lot of tyranny in the last 3.5 years, especially with their mandates, which is not even laws. And then later on, oh, it's just a request. Yeah, they get very forceful with their mandates, slamming people to the ground, 5, 6 cops beating one person up while the other cops stop the protesters come near them. Anyway, there's a lot of reasons to get out of Dodge, that's for sure. Now there's a lot of crazy stuff that I could go further into that's happening around the world, but I'll let you get some of that information from some of the people I'll recommend that you watch instead of the television. So if you tune into David Icke, Cherry Tenpenny, Mike Adams, you've got Dane Wigington on all the weather warfare that's happening against us, and many others. But there's some names anyway, and from there you can hear another perspective on what's really going on in the world and how they're trying to do a coup d'etat on Earth. Now there's lots of other attack methods, by blowing up pipelines, by putting a fake person in with a mask on as a president, and the other one was Mr. Operation Warp Speed, like in America. I mean, it's one big theater show, and it's just a matter of saying there's nobody coming to our rescue. Humanity's on its own in this, and we got to stick together, wake up together, stick together, and fight this crap off. But where you fight from has a lot to do with whether you survive this and whether you have a decent life in the meantime. And that's why I prefer Dominican Republic, that's for sure, because nobody's going to turn up on your doorstep because they heard you put this out or something else. And this crap happens in Australia, Canada, and other places where cops turn up. I know one of the guys I wanted to recommend, Max Imagen, just managed to make it out of Australia because he had spoken out against all the tyranny. They wanted to arrest him. There's many more, but if you start listening to them, after a little while and think, wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. You see, when you have your head in the sand, you can't see the sky. You got to see shit for what it is. This is a much crueler world than most people want to admit that they're living in. And we've got child sex trafficking rings going berserk and governments backing it. There's a lot of stuff coming to the surface now. Hollywood people are starting to speak out because they just don't want to sell their soul off anymore and they want to come clean. So this is like one big, excuse me for saying it, pimple that's being popped, and it will be popped, and then these criminals will be held to account, hopefully, and we'll see them. Alright folks, I just had to change spot, so now I'm over amongst my mangoes. So this is a delicious treat every day, having a few of these big fellas drop down, and I have to pick them up before bugs and other things get to them. Anyway, another benefit of being on this beautiful turf here. Now I just want to talk a bit about the police down here. I would say in general, if you learn to kind of avoid them and how to handle them, which I can teach people in consultations, then they pretty much leave you alone, and especially if you're a foreigner. The only people they pick on where it's really getting up a lot of people's noses, the Haitians. They get picked on a lot. From up the food chain, they get instructed to hunt them down from construction sites, etc. So it's not very nice. So I try to do as much to fight that down here as I can, and you will be left alone. The locals pretty much will be left alone unless people are into crime. Then they will of course chase after people, or if they break the few laws that they do have. Now other things I do like about here is that there's no road rage. You don't see people pulling each other out of windows or punching each other through windows of cars. I watched all this in other countries, and down here that anger just doesn't exist in society. So it's more about you go, or if they get frustrated, so bang bang, go go, oh come on. But it's not like they want to end up in a punch up like in many other countries. There's like an expected respect in society, and nobody's there to insult each other, disrespect each other, or senseless assault. You don't see that down here. There is situations, of course, there's crime that happens down there. A lot of the theft is simply just opportunity theft. So if you carry a lot of belongings and you go in some remote place and you haven't got weapons with you, well, you could become a target. But it's all about these thieves getting away with it without anybody seeing it. I've said before in my documentaries, if you're in the public eye, you're safer than a holy cow in India. So stay in the public eye if you're nervous about theft and assaults and so forth, and then it won't happen. It's probably one of the safest countries, I think, to walk around in, especially up here on the north coast. And the other thing I like is there's no big pushing of this agenda compared to some other countries. They're starting because it's a globalist agenda. They want to have all this rainbow stuff out. But I think Dominicans are blind to what it actually is. They have streets full of rainbow umbrellas and stuff like that, but they don't really connect the dots to what's being pushed. So down here, there's no arguments in society between people about gender or anything. You never hear that. You never hear racist arguments either in society. I've never heard any argument over color or anything like that. So it's beautiful in that way. And that's why a lot of people of all cultures, nationalities and colors feel very comfortable here, because they can just be themselves. Another thing you may like down here is the freedom of speech. So if you want to put flyers out, hand people stuff, put stickers up, put posters up, do some graffiti on a wall. Well, you can't just do any wall, of course, but if it's something down some street, just dividing some land or something, people do graffiti things and nobody cares. Nobody says anything. So there's no big controlling power trying to sip people's lips up. And I like that. The First Amendment, as Americans know it, it's very important, the ability to say what you want to say. And if people don't like it, well, they can just agree to disagree. But if we lose that, then we have tyranny. And that's happening in a lot of other countries. So that's one good thing down here. You can speak out. Also, I just wanted to talk about, there's no climate change being pushed on the television or on radio that I've heard, or on social media in Dominican Republic. They do it internationally, of course. The other thing is, many foreigners who came here, like myself, wanted to get away from over-regulated countries. You know, there's laws in the past that was invented to put law and order in society, but when it becomes a sport to governments to regulate this, that and the other thing so they can make more money or they can have more unearned control over people's lives, that's when the whole thing starts going sideways. So that's one good thing down here. Even the few laws that seem to be pushed are not adhered to. There's laws and rules here, but a lot of them, like the helmet law for motorbike drivers, it's only adhered to by a 30-40% group of people because it's so hot. I'm not saying it's a good thing that they don't put a helmet on, but it should be people's choice, of course, not the government's. Another thing I think you're going to enjoy is, like I kind of hinted out before, fruits, vegetables. You can easily get them or grow them, and there's small pickups, trucks driving around selling them. You can find different markets and stands where they sell fruits and veggies and all sorts of root plants like starches for your dinner. So it's not just potatoes. You can get all types of roots and so forth that they use for sancocho and their different meals. So that's an attractive thing, because in many countries it's not even food they sell anymore. It's all processed stuff, manufactured. You don't even know what you're eating. I'm sorry, Americans, but I stay off all American type products because all the pesticides and everything that they put in, and sometimes it's seedless GMO crap. I'd rather buy Dominican homegrown stuff down here, and I think you're going to enjoy it too. Okay, when it comes to schools down here, nobody's going to give you a hard time for homeschooling, and to me that's one of the best ways, because most schools are just government brainwashing institutes to fill the children with fear and to indoctrinate them more than educate them. Dominicans are very religious people. They don't tolerate neither satanic or this kind of TQ, this, that and the other thing, agendas. So hopefully we can get rid of that crap down here and not have children sexualized or mutualized or anything else that they do in some countries overseas. They're not there at all. They're very protective of their children, like parents should be, and if any school tried any stupid shit, they would be pulling their kids out of school like that. That's the problem overseas. Homeschooling, if you ever want to check out a site, it's called time and the number 4 learning.com. That's a homeschooling program, and that gives you control over what your children are being taught, and it's usually half the time on the computer and half the time off, and then it's just a matter of helping your kids get out there and socialize with other children, playing sports, etc., and they grow up to becoming well-balanced children. And you can also teach them things, of course, that they don't learn in the public schools or government-run schools. How to be an entrepreneur, how to be self-employed. I never heard a squeak about that. I had to bump into that by accident. So that just shows they try to keep a lot of things from people when they're going through the schooling system of the governments. Another thing I really like here is the fact that cash is king. The globalists of the world, they want to get rid of cash because cash means freedom. Cash means we have choices of how much we can save, want to spend, when we want to spend it, and they want to control all this and tax the shit out of all of us. So it's never enough. It's not enough to be mega rich for them. They got to be even more mega rich, and they want to see us poor. And by eliminating cash and making everything digital, this is part of that whole agenda. And unfortunately, you're seeing people acquiesce with this shit. Supermarkets that are opening up where you can't use cash. And people should boycott these places because it's a trap. The trap is that you end up with a central bank digital coin, and they'll tell you what you can and can't do and fine you for going here or going there, and you're only allowed one trip every 3 years, a short one, yet they race around Earth in their Lear jets and enjoy life. So it's a bunch of hypocrites. So if people don't wake up and realize how important cash is, and then they're going to wonder why they went along with all this tyranny all the way along anyway. So down here, it's so nice just to pull up in the gas station, yeah, give me 200 pesos for my motorbike, and I'm out of there in no time. You know, if that was a digital transaction, there would be a long queue, people who wouldn't be able to figure out how to do it, and it would be chaos. So Dominicans like their cash. If you go further down south into the cities, they're using credit cards more, and they think it's such a prestigious thing to have a fancy credit card, but they don't know it's a huge big trap. So I'm fighting behind the curtains as well with information to get the Dominicans to realize it's a trap. Hang on to cash, keep as little in the bank as you can, and pay cash and demand that they accept cash or they can lose out on a sale. We got to boycott that whole agenda with enslavement. So I like the North Coast so far. It still has these old-fashioned freedoms, and we got to retain those. Anyway, enough on that one. Now, one thing you should like down here, I believe, is the fact that you have access to many beaches. Especially here on the North Coast, there's so many different wonderful tropical beaches you can head for, and it's not like there's a security gate to get into most of them unless it's right in front of a resort. In 5 years, 10 years time, who knows what it's going to be like, but right now there's still a lot of options when it comes to beach access. And if you're down in Punta Cana, it's a little bit more difficult there. You may have to show an ID or let them have a copy of something in order to access and get down and see the beach. But up here on the North Coast, so far so good. Now, when it comes to property ownership, that's a serious matter down here, and people wouldn't easily tolerate having their property taken off them, like we see is happening in many countries. They change legislation because of chemical spills or fires, and people can't return to their properties and rebuild, even though it's the culprits that just destroyed everything they owned. So if that happened down here, I guarantee you, out comes the guns. And there's a lot of them here. People don't tolerate bullshit like they do in some countries. And they're not pussies, excuse my French. If somebody messes with somebody, them, their uncles and cousins and everybody who's got a pistol will be coming for that person or the authorities even. They don't mess around if they feel heavily violated. So that's a good thing. So once you buy a piece of property here, you feel pretty safe that it's yours. Once you got the title, you decide what happens on that piece of land. Now, what I'm noticing in a lot of countries right now is with this globalist agenda 2030, they keep changing laws and come in with new mandates and stuff. We're not seeing that here to that degree anyway. There's some small things maybe being pushed in the big cities. But if I compare 2010, 2015, 2020 in terms of regulations, it's pretty much the same thing. And the whole COVID period there, yeah, there was some insane stuff, but everything went back to how it was back in those other years I mentioned. So so far so good. And if I had to choose, I wouldn't want to live in countries where they're constantly changing the goalposts and the rules on people to steal their property, their assets, their children, etc. So you don't have that crap happening right here anyway. One question I get from a lot of people is it possible to live off-grid and be totally disconnected? Yeah, it is. Whether you would want to, well, that's a different story. I think I also mentioned that there's no postal service down here, so nobody has letterboxes. So unless you step on somebody's toes, there's nobody knocking on your gate, no letterbox. You can have your own power, you can dig your own well if it's your own land, have your own water supply, grow your own food. It's hard to grow enough food to feed yourself, even though I have a friend who is growing a lot of food on a farm that he established, and he'll have enough very soon to sustain him and his family, as well as other people that he can sell it to. So everything's possible with money. So basically my conclusion is the North Coast here is very nice to live in. You can live a very well-balanced lifestyle as long as you've got an income source, which is $1,500 or more per month. Well, it kind of depends on whether family or not. A single person could probably pull it off on $1,000 down here. And family, they'll probably need a couple of $1,000 plus to live a decent lifestyle, depending on what you rent or whether you bought something and have no rent, etc. All right, folks, I hope everything you saw in this video and heard was informative and helpful in terms of making a fully informed decision about your future. This life is short, even at its longest, and it belongs to the risk takers. Just take calculated risks based on what you learn and what you find out. And feel free to check out my website InfoHub. And also, if anybody wants to hire my services, I do relocation consultancy through video calls as well as face-to-face down here, and mini tours. It's an introduction tour for 3 hours where I take people around and show them where to set up their phone, set up with insurance, etc., etc. Reach out to me on info@educatedtraveler.info, and thank you very much for watching. And I see I've got a visitor here. This is my little friend. Hello. All right, folks, take care, and we'll see you next time.